Good afternoon, everyone. Sid King here at NWS Atlanta in Peachtree City. This will be a special briefing to discuss the potential for severe weather starting tomorrow morning and remaining through much of the day on Monday. The character of this severe weather event will be a line of storms bringing severe weather to north and central Georgia. Some isolated strong storms could be possible even as early as late this afternoon, but diminishing this evening. After a fairly quiet period overnight, some storms are going to begin to enter far northwest Georgia early Monday morning and advance southward. Our greatest risk and the timing of this greatest risk is going to be late Monday morning into the afternoon, with strengthening and redeveloping storms in west and central Georgia. Severe storms that develop will be capable of producing damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour, some brief tornadoes, and large hail even as great as an inch or slightly greater. And some stronger storms will also be capable of producing locally heavy rain, which could lead to some nuisance flooding concerns. Here is our Day 1 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. We have an enhanced risk, which is a level 3 out of 5 in far northwest Georgia. This is primarily for the severe weather risk as the line of storms pushes in before sunrise tomorrow. The primary risk will be strong to damaging winds embedded within this line, with winds up to 60 miles per hour. We can't rule out a brief tornado during the early morning hours as well. To the south of this, there is a slight risk and a marginal risk going as far south as about I-85. And isolated storms ahead of this main line could also produce damaging wind gusts and lightning. Here's a look at the specific hazards and how they break down during the early morning hours before 8 a.m. We can see at the top of the screen our severe wind outlook is the highest category of a risk, with between a 30 to 45% chance of severe wind being observed within 25 miles of a point in that far northwestern corner. That diminishes to 15 to 29% as you head south and east, and then about 5 to 14% as you go further south towards the northern part of the metro area. The tornado risk will be about 5% to about 9% in any portion of far northwest Georgia during the early morning hours, diminishing lower as you go south and east. And then hail is not anticipated to be a significant risk during the early morning hours. Now transitioning to after 8 a.m., this is where we start getting the Day 2 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. And here we have an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5, generally along and south of a rough line from about Rome to Gainesville and south. Here we can expect to see just about all of our severe weather hazards, damaging winds over 60 miles per hour. Several tornadoes will be possible, especially so in west central Georgia in the late morning and early afternoon. Hail up to and possibly slightly larger than an inch will also be possible. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, we could see some locally heavy rainfall with stronger storms, which could lead to some isolated flash flooding and river flooding concerns. And then, of course, we'll have plenty of instability, so there will be a good amount of lightning with any storms that develop. Once again, breaking down the specific severe weather risks after 8 a.m. tomorrow on Monday. This line of storms is going to continue to move southward throughout the day. Now, when we get into the late morning and afternoon, heat and instability is going to help redevelop and strengthen storms along the line. And as that happens, our wind threat across the majority of our area outside of the northern tier is looking about a 30 to 45% chance of wind damage within 25 miles of a given point, which is that goes right in line with our enhanced risk. Our tornado threat is up to 10% to as high as 14%. You may have noticed, unlike our previous event, we don't have any hatching in the area, which would indicate a potential higher end tornado of EF2 or higher. So our tornado threat for this event is looking like it's going to be more brief, short-lived tornadoes, but there could be several of them over the course of the day. And then finally, there's also a 15 to 29% risk of hail throughout the area as well, generally about the size of an inch or a quarter, or perhaps just slightly larger. Now we're going to talk a little bit about timing of these storms and some of the modes of threat we're going to see as well. There is still some uncertainty with respect of timing. To illustrate this, I'm going to use the HER, although there could be slight discrepancies between the high resolution models, even as we get closer to the event, which could lead to some disagreement with the timing. So the main line of storms approaches far north Georgia about 6 a.m. and with sufficient instability and strong shear in this area, which we can see out ahead of this, we could see some damaging wind gusts and possibly a brief tornado. In this area circled in the far northwest, this is where some of that uncertainty comes into play. We could see a couple of discrete cells start forming out ahead of the line of storms. This could work with the instability in this area, get a couple of strong cells going, which could also produce severe weather threats. The instability, our surface-based available potential energy in the morning, will be fairly strong for this time of the year, looking at about between 500 and 800 joules per kilogram. So with that surface-based available potential energy, there is the potential for some convective storms to stretch down to the surface, which could allow, again, impacts to extend down to the surface as well. Here is also our storm relative helicity, which is our potential for storms to gain rotation, and a lot of this also goes in line with low-level shear. We have some storm relative helicity levels between 0 and 1 kilometers of up to 150, 200 meters squared over seconds squared. So this could allow for some rotation to develop in these storms. So this combination illustrates that our potential of damaging winds and rotation within the storms that could produce brief tornadoes will be right there from the outset, even in these discrete cells that develop ahead of the line. Now through the morning, the line of storms is going to continue to advance southeast. This image here from the HER is from 9 a.m. And this image implies that some far northern portions of the line could weaken and become more diffuse as the environment gets worked over as storms continually move over the far northern tier. It's also possible that we could see strong bowing segments possible within the main push of the line during the early morning hours as it continues to push through the area. All these bowing segments would of course be capable of producing damaging wind gusts, with some of the bookend vortices of that also being able to wrap up a brief tornado as well. Once again, out ahead of the line, we'll have to watch for discrete cells ahead of it, which could even spread into the Atlanta metro area by as early as mid-morning during the morning time. Now here is the composite reflectivity from 11 o'clock. And this shows a push of storms exiting Alabama and entering into western Georgia by about 11 o'clock. And then at this point, we're going to have better instability in those areas where we haven't seen any precip yet. We'll see stronger instability and a bit more fuel for these storms to work with. So on that note, by about noon, about 16 UTC, we could potentially see some redeveloping and strengthening along the line as it works its way into Georgia, especially with ample daytime destabilization. We're very hot and humid comparatively for this time of the year tomorrow, and that's going to be plenty of potential energy for thunderstorms to work with. You can see in this area circled here, that's going to be our highest convective available potential energy, with values even exceeding 2,000 joules per kilogram in portions of west central Georgia. This is going to overlap with our greatest shear, which is here on the right, as indicated by our storm relative helicity at the low levels. So this area in west central Georgia by early afternoon, we're going to have the ingredients with CAPE and helicity for our highest potential of strong winds and tornadoes of the day. So in the late morning and early afternoon, we're going to start seeing the line begin to work its way along the I-85 corridor and start advancing not only into the metro area, but also down in west central Georgia near Columbus. And once again, this is where our highest threat of strong winds and tornadoes is going to be, especially in the early afternoon. Then this line is going to begin to transition eastward throughout the early afternoon. So overall, this line of storms is going to enter the east metro Atlanta area about 11 a.m. and then exit to the southwest and continue to move, exit to the southeast rather, and then move to the east by about 2 p.m. With this phrase right here, I realize that you need to strike it and reverse it. It's going to enter the west metro ATL around 11 a.m. and exit southeast by about 2 p.m. Now, as we get to about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, give or take about an hour or so, these storms are going to continue to advance to the east towards about the Macon area. And as we continue through the afternoon, they're expected to exit the area by about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. One thing that we will need to keep an eye on is there's going to be the potential as the mainline exits of a thin line of storms possible in far north Georgia in the afternoon. This is going to start working its way southward and eastward during the late afternoon, but with the loss of instability after sunset, the severe threat is expected to come to an end at that time. But again, as the main line continues to work its way through east through east and central Georgia, all modes of severe weather are going to remain a threat, damaging wind gusts, hail, and brief tornadoes as well. And if we're able to recover the air mass in the far north, that could also produce a couple of strong storms as well. So we could be looking at a brief second round of severe weather in the far north during the late afternoon hours. Here is our rainfall total, which are expected to rain from about 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches across the forecast area through tomorrow night. The Weather Prediction Center has diagnosed us in a day 2 marginal excessive rainfall outlook. So while widespread flooding concerns are not expected, especially not to warrant a flood watch at this time, some stronger storms that occur could produce locally heavy rainfall and allow for ponding of water in low-lying areas, flood-prone areas, which could produce some nuisance flash flooding. So once again, our mode of severe weather is going to be a line of storms, bringing a severe weather threat to north and central Georgia. Isolated strong storms in the mid to late afternoon. Today will diminish this evening, giving way to fairly benign conditions until storms enter the far northwest early Monday and advance southward. Our greatest risk of timing for severe weather is going to overlap in west central Georgia late in the morning into the afternoon, as with strengthening and redeveloping storms with our highest available potential energy overlapping our greatest shear during that time. All severe weather threats will be on the table, with the most prominent being damaging winds with 60 to 70 mile per hour, tornadoes, most of them fairly brief and short-lived, but there will be a potential for several of them. Large hail of up to an inch, maybe slightly greater. And then finally, a few stronger storms could produce locally heavy rain and nuisance flooding. And of course, just a couple of graphics we'd like to share with you is 6 ways to receive a warning, and then also have a plan to prepare even before you go to bed this evening. Be prepared to act quickly in case a tornado warning is issued for your area. Feel free to take these from this presentation and share them with anyone, share them with partners, with friends and family as you see fit. And that concludes this special weather briefing. We're not planning any additional briefings at this time, but we encourage you to join us in the Slack. And of course, here is our contact information in case you need to get in touch with us. On behalf of us all here at the National Weather Service in Atlanta, we hope you have a great rest of the day, and of course encourage you to always stay safe. Thank you very much and have a great day.